Welcome to Behind the Fence with Blake Thomas. Presented by Vinyl Fence Warehouse, the podcast where we talk to fence contractors about their journey in the fencing industry. So latch the gate and get ready, because we're about to dive deep into the world of fencing.
Hey everyone, I'm Blake at Vinyl Fence Warehouse, and on today's episode of the Behind the Fence podcast, I have with me Matthew Chiaradonna from JC Fence Co. He's also the owner of Elite Technique, a really cool software CRM for your fence companies. JC Fence has been in business since 1972. Matt, obviously that's a family-owned structure there, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're on the third generation now.
Very cool. Now, how long have you kind of been, heading things up there?
Purchased the company in 2007 from my grandfather. I was, I believe, 20 at the time, and so I have been there for the last 19 years, kind of running the operation by myself.
Wow, okay. And where are you guys out of exactly?
So we're located just north of Boston, Massachusetts, in a town called Middleton, Mass. We have one location in Middleton and a second location in North Andover. They're pretty close by to one another, but right in the same area, right in the same neck of the woods.
Very cool, very cool. Now, you just showed me your sweet attic setup that you have there. How far of a drive is it into the actual office for you?
So I moved up to Kingston, New Hampshire about 2 years ago, and I am about a 30 to 40-minute commute back and forth to the office, depending on what time. I'm an early riser, so if I leave at 5 a.m., I can usually get there in like 25 minutes, but on the way home, it's much more like 40.
So you live in New Hampshire, but work in Massachusetts.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that makes you a multi-state operator, dude. That's sweet.
Yeah, we're jumping the state lines on the day-to-day basis.
Real quick, now, how did you guys land on JC Fence Co.? Now, what's the story behind the name?
My grandfather's name is John Chiaradonna. He was a firefighter who was working that typical 2-day shift, right? 24 hours on, couple of days off, and he started into landscaping. And so they started off as JC Landscaping, met a gentleman who owned a warehouse like your own that was really nice and willing to sell wholesale to him. Got hooked up with him, got a few leads, and decided that the fence was worth more than the landscaping, and he switched it up. He had a son, his name was also John Chiaradonna. So my dad and my grandfather both named the same. That was where the JC came from.
Well, very cool, man. Now, kind of give us like a little bit of scale of your company. Now, you have your installation company. How many crews are you kind of running with that?
Yeah, so I mean, the last couple of years in our neck of the woods after COVID have really calmed down. And so we haven't really juiced up to our normal top of the line. But I would say on any given day, we're going to run between 7 to 9 residential install crews over the last couple of summers.
Wow, that's impressive, man. Now, what kind of, yearly revenue is that bringing you, or, amount of jobs, hundreds or...
Yeah, so we're doing anywhere between 400 and 500 jobs. Our typical average sale on a job depends on the year. During COVID, we were close to 4,600 on the average size job. That's very much residentially based. We don't do a whole lot of commercial sales. The last 2 years, we've seen that number tick down. This past year, we were like 3,800 and change for our average sale job. Residential installs usually will bring us right around $3 million a year in revenue for that portion of the install or of the company, right? We do some wholesale sales to other fence companies similar to yourself. And then we also do quite a bit of retail walk-in. And then the last part of our fence company is snow removal, right? So up here in the Northeast, we're getting bombarded with snow at least a couple of times a month. And so that kind of is our last thing to bring in revenue as far as the fence company goes.
Very cool. So you're a very multifaceted fence company with a lot of different offerings that, can really kind of keep you busy, it sounds like.
Yeah, it evolves, right? We were very much residential and wholesale only through the early years of me being, the owner, and the winters got tough. Most fence guys can probably attest to that. Also, we were very seasonal with our employees, and our best people would leave to get unemployed, and we wouldn't always get them back in the spring. So we tried our hardest to add in that snow facet so that our best employees wouldn't have to worry about finding something to do for the winter season. They could just transition into snow, and we've been really building on that probably over the last 10 or so years, and it's been a big help.
You said you have 7 to 9 crews. Now, do you have your crews more specialized to where, you have X amount of crews that are doing more of like your vinyl fencing or your wood fencing, or are most of your crews, pretty well rounded to where they can all handle it?
It's a really good question, and I would say that the majority of my crews are very well rounded to where they could go to just about any job. But we do have crews that we definitely have specialties on. So we have a couple of wood crews up here in New England. We do a lot of custom wood, historical district areas where the wood is very carpentry-like. And so we do have a couple of crews that when we get into those more custom carpentry type wood fences that those guys are going to go to it no matter what. And we also have a lot of like railing type jobs or commercial type chain link jobs, and we have a couple specialty crews for that. So we try to keep them as well rounded as possible, but no matter what, I think there's always going to be people who kind of have their specialties in certain areas, and we definitely lean on them when the material determines it.
Now, you guys are primarily a no dig company, correct?
Yeah, we do as much no dig as humanly possible. We're still trying to evolve the wood into no dig just because of the way that, again, us in New England, we're just weird people and we install fence in a mortise and tenon style. So our wooden poles actually have holes drilled in them like a vinyl pole would. We actually have doweled ends on our rails. And so we're actually plugging a rail into a post. Makes it a little bit more difficult to pound when you have to. It's not like vinyl where, right, the rails are loose. It's all pre-built. Everything we do,
Right.
we build in the shop and then we put it up as we go, panel post. So we haven't come up with a perfect plan for no dig wood, but we mix it in when we can.
Very good. Now, is your equipment pretty well kind of rounded out the same, or do you have more of like a vinyl setup and a wood setup and so on?
Yeah, so I would say that we definitely nowadays have more of a vinyl and a wood setup that are separate because of the pounding, right? So until last year, there was no pounders on any trucks. We have our skid steers, the little Kubota SCL 1000s that you can stand behind, put the bucket or the dingo on. We are in a very high ledge area, so those dingoes don't oftentimes dig the way we want them to. So we still dig a lot by hand, or at least we used to before pounding. And so the crews were, for the most part, decked out almost equally across the board. And then the guys would have like a locker back at the warehouse where anything that they didn't think they needed for a job, they could leave those extras, right? So we don't always try to be every single tool on every single truck, but we do have the areas staked out for them to put all their tools for whatever they're working on. And if they're going from commercial chain link back to residential vinyl, they might leave some of the tools like the bandsaws and things like that in their locker and bring out, the things that they would specifically use for chain link.
Right, just kind of somewhat on a job to job basis, you know. Let's start with your best seller. What is probably your best selling fence that you guys offer?
Definitely flip-flops between vinyl and wood every year, and it's really market driven. So we go back to like before COVID, and before COVID, there were some tariffs on wood. The same administration now was the same administration in right before COVID, and they had tariffed our wood imports. We get a lot of our wood from Canada. And so right before COVID, we were selling probably at least 70% of our work was vinyl because the prices were very cheap in comparison to wood. And so people would just opt to go for the vinyl. During COVID, as you know, things really evened back off again, right? The vinyl prices skyrocketed. And so when they did, we pretty much went back to like a tit for tat. It was like 35, 36 wood to vinyl. One year was vinyl on top by 1%. The next year, it was wood back on top. Now, since things have calmed down, I would say vinyl's starting to kind of rise back to the top again.
Now, what would you say sets you apart in your area to where you know that you guys have been the fence company that has been able to withstand the test of time?
It's family, right? Everything we do is family oriented. It's been family working with us or for us. It's been friends of family that's with us. It's always somebody that really cares about the legacy and really cares about the reputation of the company. We've always made it a point to keep every customer happy. We've always made it a point to, even before we knew there were five-star reviews, it was what we called word of mouth, right? Before there was a Google review, our biggest way of getting jobs were word of mouth. It was the way we treated the customers like family, the way we treated the team like family. We always made sure that if we wouldn't accept it in our house, it didn't go up at somebody else's house. And I just think that that reputation and trustworthiness has built itself up over the generations. And when people look at us compared to other companies in the area, we're never the most expensive. We're definitely not the cheapest. We're always kind of middle of the market, but we set ourselves aside with that, I guess, reputation that, you're going to be treated right. You're going to be told the truth. We're always going to be upfront and honest with you with everything we're doing. And I think that's definitely gotten around, right? That word of mouth has passed around enough that we've built ourselves a pretty strong reputation in the area.
Oh yeah, man, quality over quantity every time. Now, how do you actually market yourself and your company?
Yeah, we do it through a few different ways. We market ourselves through going to a lot of local high school or job fairs, right? So that's partly marketing for us to recruit, but obviously it's partially marketing for us to be branded, right? So all these kids are graduating high school, maybe going to college, they have parents, some of the parents are at the job fair, some of them might be buying a house in 4 to 6 years, and maybe they'll remember seeing, and that's the market that we want, right? We want that younger market, those people who are 20 to say 35, because they're not buying their forever home that first time around a lot of the time, right? So we might be able to get
Right.
two jobs out of them, not just one. So yeah, we're marketing through that. We also go to local trade events. So, if you have the home show, we might be going to that and we're going to be talking with customers there. That's just kind of like ground level stuff, right? We naturally will donate to the local charities. So if there's a local relay race, or, you know, one of those types of deals. We donate to local baseball and softball teams. Again, just kind of like branding type stuff, foot on the ground. But then you've got your normals, right? We do paid Google ads. We do SEO as well. And that's about it for paid. I mean, we're doing stuff for free, right? Like everybody else, we're taking advantage of Instagram and Facebook, and we're trying to post at least 3 to 5 times every single week on there to get our Facebook page followed. I tell you, man, the free mums groups and the city groups, they really pay dividends. You treat a couple of good local families well, and all of a sudden you're getting referred every other week in a Facebook group. So that's kind of the joint effort that we use to call our marketing plan.
Man, that's a really good way to do it. I mean, we practice the same things, pushing ourselves as much as we can for free. One thing, that I always tell everybody, even if they're just starting out, because it's not that big of an investment, is to go ahead and get some fence signs made, with your information on it, so that way, whether the neighbors are talking or not, somebody can see.
They see it.
sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. The stick in the ground lawn signs always pay dividends. You stick that in there a week before you do the job. You have it up while you're doing it, and it stays a few days after you're done. It seems to turn heads and get people interested.
Oh, for sure, man. Now, are you guys... Well, actually, I'm sorry. I'll skip this one because I have the guy himself. I usually ask companies, hey, are you using any software? So we have the software guy here. So give us a quick rundown of what your software, Elite Technique, can do for a fence company like yourself, to where you are, starting the job from start to finish. You're taking the call. You're dealing with the customer all the way until you receive payment for, the final invoice.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, I am using my own software. It's called Elite Technique. So why I have Elite Technique is because I was out there looking for a software that I felt like could do what you just said. We are taking calls, taking emails, taking leads, and we need to track those somehow, some way. We're using a calendar system to book our estimators. We have multiple estimators. We need to be able to see all those calendars, organize those calendars. We're doing that in Elite Technique. We wanted to have a system where our drawing tool could talk directly to our CRM, right? We didn't want to be using a drawing tool to get to a list of materials that then needed to sync back into our CRM. So we built our drawing tool directly into our CRM. So we're using Google Earth images, we're using white paper, graph paper, or the ability to upload documents. We're setting scale or using Google Earth scale to actually draw right onto our backdrop, whatever we've chosen. And kind of like the thing that we built into Elite Technique is our proprietary fence calculator. So I've taught Elite Technique what all the fence parts are, right? What's a brace band? What's a rail end? What does it do? When is it needed, right? And when I do my drawing based off of the material style I selected, it'll break it all the way down into all the parts and pieces that I need, which allows me to send my proposal. We have digital signature built right into our proposal so that a customer can sign and accept right then and there. When they do, it creates an invoice. We have payment processing built into our software so that we can have a payment link that allows the customer to pay and automatically sign our invoice off as paid, creating a bill of material. Our software creates that BOM for you, and then we have like a project storage place where all contracted jobs go to be walked through. So now we can take you from, again, I just walked you through like, hey, open lead all the way to sale. Then we take you into the project space where we're able to take you from a sold job through your standing operating procedure of install to the final process. There's obviously a lot of other bells and whistles that go along with it in between, but that's the 1,000-foot overview. We're trying to give you one place where you can store your pictures, store your videos, get your digital signatures, send your payment links, do your drawings, and keep track of all of that from wherever you are, all in one spot. That's the basis of what I built Elite Technique to do.
So On a scale of, probably say 1 to 10, I've dealt with a couple other softwares. What would you say is, your, user friendly number as far as, being able for somebody, who's used to, not a whole lot of technology, not a whole lot of computer use, are they going to be able to use this, without too much training?
Yeah, sure. And so it really comes down to like the onboarding, right? So a lot of the onboarding and training happens with me. I'm a fence guy. And as long as I know what you're trying to accomplish, it can be as easy as pie or it can be as complicated as you want it to be. What I mean by that is that because the software can do so many things like inventory and purchasing, if we want it to do all those, then it's complicated, right? We have to set up lots of products. We have to set up lots of vendors. We have to set up costs. We have to set up lots of things. If you are a big fence company and you want this extra layer of software, right, to do all these things, yeah, you're on the complicated side like everything else. But if you're a residential installation company that's doing 1 or 2 trucks and all you're trying to do is get what you charge per foot in there and tie it to the drawing tool so that you can store your contacts, make your drawings and get your prices out quick, I can have you up and running in 2 hours, right? So it really is a user's choice. If you want simple, we'll make it simple and it's a 10 out of 10. But if you don't want simple, I'll make it as complicated as you want it to be. So really it comes into my onboarding. When I meet you, when I explain it to you, I'm asking you those pertinent questions like, what are you trying to get accomplished? What are your pain points, right? Like, what's your tolerance for change? And once I can really understand where you're coming from as a company, I'll kind of give my advice like, well, here's what I see. We can make this real easy. I can have you using it in the next 2 hours here if you want to, but you're not going to have inventory, right? You're not going to have vendors, requests for purchasing, all that stuff, but I can get it working for you real fast. On the flip side, I have customers that want to customize it. They're like, your complicated isn't even close to complicated enough for me. How about we add these 10 things? And so we're also doing explorations with companies, learning about the way they behave and customizing our software so that it works for them the way they want it to, right? So it's a hard question when you ask that because we're not like a cookie cutter out of the box software. We can be, but we also don't have to be. And so, yeah,
Sure.
it really depends on the customer, right? How simple do you want it?
Honestly, I'll be taking a deeper look at Elite Technique. I'll have to get with you on some of it. There are some softwares that we've used in the past that I honestly haven't really cared for. Now let's dive into the next part. You are the sitting president of the American Fence Association Northeast chapter, correct?
Yep,
All right.
exactly.
Tell
I
us a little
got
bit about
bumped
that.
up.
And what
Yeah.
does that entail for you?
So it just started. My past president was moved to the AFA board. And so he got moved up and was not allowed to sit 2 spots. So there was like a quick emergency vote, and I got pushed up a few months early. So as of the beginning of January, I did become the president. I was the president-elect for the past 2 years. What does that mean? It means that pretty much we're organizing the board that is taking care of everything that happens in the Northeast. We have an every 2 year fence convention that takes place up here. So we're the active group that's picking the location, scheduling the vendors, scheduling the schooling and all that fun stuff. We try to make sure that we have at least one quarterly in-person meeting with education, with golf for fun, whatever it is that we're doing. So we're planning a lot of that stuff. It means we get to help a lot of people, right? We get to give a lot of donations to the AFA school. We get to give a lot of education donations to the Ron Burton Foundation and things like that. So that's really cool to be able to be a part of. And, really it's just the ability to kind of be the mouthpiece for the Northeast to the national stage, right? I get to be a part of a lot of these meetings at the national events. Every time there's a mid-year or a national event like Utah coming up in Salt Lake City, we'll come in advance and we'll sit for a couple of days to make sure we understand what the national chapter wants pushed, make sure that our voice gets heard on the national stage. And again, it's kind of like that mouthpiece to let the areas talk to the national and make sure everybody's on the same page moving forward.
And so I'm sure it adds a lot to your plate, man. So number one, thanks for taking on the task of being a chapter president. I can already tell it's no easy deal. So what can you tell us, for a brand new fence company, if they're thinking about, joining your chapter, what can you help them with?
Yeah. So there's just so many things that can help you. The AFA does a good job of, again, I'll start off like surface level stuff, right? Like if you join the AFA, you get all kinds of breaks with all different kinds of companies that are out there. I can't tell you the whole list off the top of my head, but UniFirst, you get big breaks on uniform stuff. I think there's a tire company in there. There's think there's an accounting company like ADP or something like that. Like if you go on the AFA website, you'll be able to actually read through all these great breaks that you get just for being a member. You get all these discounts for all of these different things. That's very surface level, but it's something, right? You're
I mean,
gonna
those are definitely perks, to get somebody
yeah.
started.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to get a break on all of the shows, right? So if you're an AFA member, you don't pay the same rate to go to any of the meetings. You're going to get a discounted rate. You're also going to get a discounted rate when you join to the national shows or the education, and you get access to that education. So once you're a member, you have access to the AFA online portal, which there's a ton of free stuff on there that you can access, and it also gives you access, as you know, to all the training that happens at these events, right? And so that's huge to me. A lot of the stuff that I've learned over the last 5 to 8 years has come through going to AFA sponsored education and hearing people like Tony Thornton and Matt Warner and Nathan Downs and all these guys be able to put on shows, or rather education classes. Man, having the access to that is enormous. And then I guess the last one I would throw out, which is cliche, everybody says it, but it's just, you can't talk about how powerful it is. It's the networking, getting yourself out there, right? People always say you get out of it what you put into it. If you don't put anything in, you're probably not going to get a whole lot back, right? It stops at the surface level stuff. But if you make an effort to go to these meetings, if you make an effort to go to these events, you're going to meet people who have already been in your situation. They've already made all the mistakes that you're about to make. And having somebody or some people like that in your corner is, as you can probably know and attest to, it's super powerful, right? If I can get experience shares from 4 or 5 people who I've met through these things that can tell me about why what they did worked or didn't work, it's going to make my journey through the, entrepreneurial battle of owning a fence company a hell of a lot easier. So this, again, those are 3 things that just pop to the head, but all pretty valuable.
You and I we were at the American Fence Association's fence installation school together. We had a lot of conversations with some new fence companies, and that's really kind of what a lot of the education goes to. Is those newer guys starting out. They have more questions than anybody, over a broad range of questions. But let's narrow it down to one thing. If you could look back and tell yourself, hey, if you were to start out, what's something that you would absolutely start off on the right foot doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've been asked it a lot in podcasts recently, and so I love that you ask it because it's huge information. So for me, it is exactly the last thing that I just said, and that is the networking. So I bought the fence company from my grandfather. My dad didn't want me to be in the fence company business. My grandfather didn't want me to be in the fence company business. My mom nobody wanted me to be in the fence company business. And so kind of when I started off, it's that chip on the shoulder, like prideful thing, like no one wanted me to do it, so I can't show them my weaknesses, or I can't ask questions when I'm down. Like I've got to figure this out because then they're going to be like, I told you so, right? And I think a lot of people have that pride where they're like, no, if I admit that I don't know something, or if I show that I don't know something, that's a bad thing. But it's not a bad thing. It's strong. Like that's the strength. If I could go back in time and talk to my younger 18, 19-year-old self, I would have went out and got mentors faster. I would have gotten to these network events that I stayed away from way faster, and I would have not stumbled over all these building blocks that I did for all those years. So that's without question the advice that I would give to others and to myself. It's don't wait to ask for help. You're not asking for help, you're asking for experience shares, right? Like go out there, network, get around the people who have been in the space for a while and ask them to give you their experience shares so that you can learn from them and maybe not make the mistakes that I made, or a lot of us probably made, right? Starting off trying to be stubborn and say, I'll mess up 5 times until I figure it out and then I'll know for the sixth. Why didn't I just ask for help on the first and get it right on the second, right? So that's my biggest bit of advice.
100%, man. I mean, being stubborn is not profitable in any way. So, it's better, to start off on that right foot and, learn as much as you can as quickly as possible. So that being said, I do know that, if I'd have had a lot of equipment, to start out with, I know that's one of the things that a lot of companies, really need to look into is equipment. Another one is the software. But for you, what would be, one of the tools on the job site that you just absolutely could not live without?
I mean, I'm old school, so for me, it's just a set of Seymour diggers, wooden handled
Mm.
metal diggers. That's the one. You give me a post hole digger, and I can figure out the rest.
Oh, yeah. Now, what is the best piece of equipment that you use now for your fence installations?
I'd say it's those pounders. We're in a place where we're very heavily covered in granite, and so we've been for the last 10 years. If it was before last year, I would have told you it was a rock drill, an electric rock drill, because we're just constantly coring into granite and sticking pieces of pipe in it so that our fence can be in the ground and not on top of a rock. And that was a huge game changer for us. But the invention or advent of adding the gas-powered post pounder to our job site these last couple of years has really changed the game for us. So I'm gonna have to say that the post pounder is the tool.
Now, which one are you guys using, just for those interested?
So we are primarily using Brian Harris's US Hammer, the gas-powered version of it, and it worked very well for us last year. We're again beating the living bejesus out of them because of the amount of rock over here, and so this year we're thinking about maybe bulking up to maybe some heavier duty ones for when we know it's bad, but staying nimble with Brian's. So we'll always be using Brian's because it's a super nimble, super versatile product, but we get into these areas where the ledge is sticking up out of the ground and we're pounding into, what we know to be less than good conditions, and they take a beating, right? We're not taking it easy on them, so we're gonna try a little bit of a heavier duty one this year.
Brian was also at the AFA
fence installation deal.
Yes, he was.
He was there with his
pounders. I think that speaks a lot of volumes as far as somebody, willing to bring their own equipment out and let anybody that wants to use it. Him and I actually both hopped on a pounder and drove down some of our spikes for our own fencing. And man, I just thought that was cool as could be. So after talking with Brian, for one, he's still pretty small knit. He's taken care of a lot of fencers personally. I know that they have, a very big reach and they're able to, really help service everybody. But Brian's still there. He's involved with the AFA. He's at these events. And, he's part of the community. So, shout out to Brian at US Hammer. I definitely approve of the hammers. So, heck yeah. Now, what's the best piece of fencing advice you think you've received?
And I guess it's not just fencing advice, it's business advice as well, but it definitely pertains to us in the fencing game, maybe us more than other industries. It's like 80% of what you could do is still better than you doing everything, 100% of the things by yourself. And so, just in the fencing game, we see a lot of owner operators that feel like they have to be the estimator because that's the communication with the customer. They have to be on the install crew because the customer can't not see them, right? And they feel like that they have to be at every step of the way, the forefront to the customer. It took me a little too long, I think, to understand that. But then when I got that advice, like even if the person that is doing it for you does it at 80% of what you could, that still allows you a lot more of your time back to work on the other things that are more important. And so it isn't specifically fence, but I think fencers are probably some of the most guilty of falling victim to it. And so I'll give that as the advice.
So, what's a quote to live by?
Quote to live by. I like the Thomas Edison one, and I forget the exact words, but it's like now I have to look it up because I want to say it right. Luckily, I got this handy dandy computer here to get it right. It's like I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. He also said, I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. So that's one of my quotes, right? Like, no matter how many times we screw up, we didn't fail yet. We didn't fail until we gave up, right? There's always one more chance, maybe, right? The next one could be it. You've heard the story about like Elon Musk, right? Guy's one rocket away from blowing up and his whole entire company is over. So he scraps together all the last pieces, launches the rocket, and then catches it. Like, now he's changed the whole entire world. So yeah, that's my quote.
That one's pretty good, man. I always like to say, quitters never win and winners never quit, dude. So
that's right.
Don't give up. Keep going. If you mess up, just, hey,
do it again.
Try again,
that's
dude.
it.
That's all you can do.
No shame.
Very nice. So for 2025, do you have any events that you'd like to talk about that you have coming up? I know we have Fence Tech, just, 2 weeks?
Yeah. I mean,
I'll
I'll shout out everything. So yeah, obviously Fence Tech is coming up. I'll be at Fence Tech all week. That's going to be an amazing event. Last year, Tennessee was just off the charts, and I've heard that this is even bigger, more people, more going on. We come back from that, and I will be at the Mr. Fence Academy retreat in Knoxville, Tennessee, and so that'll be an amazing event. Always is. Sean puts on a great learning performance, and that's kind of a can't miss event as well. Other than that, it does quiet down. I'm traveling a lot for the software. I do a lot of on-site training with the software companies that sign up, opt to just pay us to come to their facilities and kind of train them there where we can learn their operating procedures. So I travel 3 times over the month of March for that. Not really open events, but that'll make up a big bulk of the next month. And then no, it's quiet after that. The Northeast will be hosting an event in March for our annual election. So if you're listening and you're from the Northeast, more news will drop on our Facebook over the next couple of weeks about a location and what we plan to do for that. But yeah, that'd be about it.
Sounds busy. I hope you can fill up the rest of that schedule with things that are fun, things that you enjoy. Finally, man, at the end of the day, what do you do to let off some steam as a fence company owner?
So I coach my daughter's softball team. She's 9 and she's on a travel softball team that goes all over the Northeast area. So I'm usually 3 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week, wrapping up work like I will today, throwing on the shoes and running to the facility to do some softball. And I have a blast, just like, fence, just kind of you touched on it, being able to help and experience, share, and teach, if you will, the youth. I don't know why, but I love seeing that. I love seeing people grow and change and improve for the better. So that's a lot of fun for me. My family and I in the summertime have a little spot up on a lake in New Hampshire, and we love to go out to the boat and sandbar around and all that fun stuff. The girls love music and concerts, so we're constantly doing our best to do that. So yeah, and I'd say that's the main three, but still I'm in that work first phase. So it's family, then work, and then I get to have a little bit of fun when I can. We'll have more fun later.
Well, heck yeah, man. It sounds like your fencing company, your software company, they've both been really good to you, man. So, yeah, I mean, keep rocking, keep enjoying life. Matt, 1,000 thank yous for stopping by today, man. I truly appreciate you sharing your time, knowledge, and expertise with me and the listeners. How can we reach out to you about your software or, getting a fence installed?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate you and all your listeners for listening to me for the last 40 minutes or so. To get in touch with me, you can reach me directly by email. My email is elitetechnique@outlook.com. We're monitoring that 24/7. Our website is geteliteTechnique.com. So if you go on to geteliteTechnique.com, you're going to be able to schedule free demos with me whenever you want. There's videos on there. So if you kind of just want to look at it without meeting me first, there's videos on there for you to check out. And you can reach me on Instagram at Elite Technique LLC or JC Fence North Shore. Both of those Instagrams are up and putting out content every single day. We're always monitoring the inbox. So there's plenty of ways to get in touch with me if you have any questions or want to check out the software.
Man, that's really all I got, dude. Really, thank you so much for coming on today. Hope that 2025 is nothing but prosperous and profitable for you guys up there in north of Boston.
Thank you, sir, and we wish the same for you.